All right. Nice. Good morning, everyone. Uh, Thank you. Appreciate that. Welcome to this retirement transition information session number 13 on the VRS hybrid plan. Before we get started, just a reminder that there's no food or no drink, excuse me, no food is allowed in the chambers. On September 25th, City Council officially adopted a resolution to transition to VRS on January 1st, 2024. Existing employees will have 1 year to determine, so until December 31st, 2024, to make your decision either to stay with the Virginia retirement system, or excuse me, stay with the Richmond retirement system, or transition to the Virginia retirement system. This decision is permanent. It is also your individual choice. We encourage all employees to look at your own circumstances, weigh your options, and review both retirement systems. Today's session is to provide you with the information from VRS counselors about VRS to assist you with that decision. Please raise your hand if you haven't attended an information session that was held prior to the resolution of the transition. Okay, so a few. Now, please raise your hand if you know or think you have prior VRS service. No one. Oh, if you have prior VRS service, if you think or you know that you have prior VRS service. Okay. All right. This session is to present VRS information about the hybrid plan. You will go into the hybrid plan if you have no prior VRS service or if you were previously a hybrid member. Your attendance here is encouraged if you simply want to learn more about VRS and the options in general, if you aren't certain that what plan you want to go into or are in. Contact information will be provided at the end of the presentation. With that, I want to introduce our VRS counselors. We have Sally Godsey and Stephen Scott. Also with us, we have Kia Johnson and Deborah Simmons from RRS, who will assist with answering questions following the VRS presentation. You'll raise your hands if you have questions, but please save them all till the end. Before we get started, I want to provide information about a few key aspects of the transition to help you as you listen in on this information. Let's review some features. If you choose to transition to VRS, contributions to RRS will cease once you begin with VRS. You can't be in both plans. So again, if you choose to transition to VRS, your contributions to RRS will freeze or will stop. If you are not vested in either the DB or the DC plan with RRS, you will still be able to vest in the account if you reach 5 years with the city, even if you switch to VRS. RRS service is not eligible to be ported or transferred or purchased into VRS. Again, RRS service is not eligible to be ported, transferred, or purchased into VRS. RRS service, again, was not able to be transferred because of the many different types of plans and incompatibilities that will result in a translation from VRS to RRS. The only exception is for non-vested RRS defined benefit plan employees. If you fall into that category, make sure you contact RRS or HR following this session. Beginning the first pay period in 2024, employees will contribute a 5% minimum to their retirement, whether you decide to transition or not. A salary adjustment will be made to cover this increase in your employee contributions and to mitigate any FICA tax impacts. For more information, please see page 11 of your transition brief pamphlet. So the pamphlet you all see, it's on page 11. They talk about the 5% wage adjustment. To affirm your decision to stay in RRS or transition to VRS, you will need to complete an election form, which we do have here today. The form will need to be turned into HR or RRS, so you do have the ability to fill it in today if you know of your decision and turn it into RRS. With that, I'll turn it over to Sally and Stephen to begin the presentation.
Thank you. And good morning and welcome to the Hybrid Retirement Plan Features and Benefits presentation. My name is Sally Godsey. I am a hybrid plan counselor with the Virginia Retirement System. The Virginia Retirement System provides the overall plan administration for the hybrid plan. We have a call center for both employees and employers, and the VRS manages the trust fund for the defined benefit plans for the VRS.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Scott. I'm the VRS Defined Contribution Plans Plan Manager. I represent the VRS Defined Contribution Plans. I work for Mission Square Retirement. We are the third-party record keepers that have been contracted by VRS to provide the administrative services for the defined contribution plans. Some of you may be familiar with the City of Richmond 457 that is represented by Mission Square Retirement. That is a separate division or team in Mission Square Retirement. They are not associated with the VRS defined contribution plans, and me and my team do not represent any of the Mission Square retirement products or services. I lead our team of education specialists throughout the Commonwealth, and we have a walk-in center here in downtown Richmond as well.
Thank you, Stephen. So we're going to get started this morning. We've got a lot of information we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the plan itself, the hybrid plan. We're going to talk about investment options under the plan, benefit payments and distributions, and some other things you might want to consider about the plans and your benefits under the hybrid plan. And then we'll talk about some of the online accounts and online tools you have to help you with your plan. First, we're going to learn about the hybrid plan itself, how it's structured, who's eligible, sort of how it works. Anyone who does not have any VRS service in their record prior to January 1 of 2014 who comes under the VRS will be in the hybrid plan. There are a few exceptions, for example, employees who are in hazardous duty positions, but basically if you don't have previous VRS service in your record and you join VRS, you will be in the hybrid plan. And we want to spend a little time talking about how the hybrid plan is structured, because this is very important because it's a little different. It has two parts to it. One part is a defined benefit component, and the other part is a defined contribution component. The defined benefit component of the plan is sort of the foundation of how the plan is structured. And the defined benefit part of the plan provides a lifetime pension benefit when you meet the age and service requirements and retire under the plan. This is sort of the foundation. And important thing about this, you will contribute to the VRS. And in this defined benefit part of the plan, the VRS manages the risk of the investments to provide the benefits that are due under the plan. The defined contribution part of the plan is different. It is a tax-deferred savings program where you and your employer put funds in the plan, the money is invested, and when you get to be retirement age, what you have is this pool of money based on how much you've contributed and the investment performance. The important thing to know about the defined contribution part of the plan is that you are responsible for managing the risk. You get to determine how those funds are invested. These two components together comprise the hybrid retirement plan under the VRS. We typically or frequently will refer to these by the abbreviations, the DB for defined benefit and DC for defined contribution. So we will use those terms a lot. But these two parts of the plan work very differently, but both parts are part of the hybrid plan. In the hybrid plan, you will make mandatory contributions of 5%. And you also have the option of making voluntary contributions. Your mandatory contributions are divided between the two different components. 4% of your 5% mandatory contribution goes into the defined benefit part of the plan. It goes into an account called your member contribution account. This account is not an investment account. It gets interest added to it. And your employer contributes to this part of the plan, but the employer contributions are not individually allocated. The employer contributions go into that big trust fund that the VRS manages to provide the benefits in the defined benefit part of the plan. On the defined contribution side, side of the plan, you will make a mandatory contribution of 1%. Your employer makes a mandatory contribution of 1%, and those mandatory contributions go into an account that's record kept at Mission Square. That account is called your 401a cash match, your hybrid 401a cash match account. If you want to make voluntary contributions, those contributions can range from 0.5% to 4%. If you make voluntary contributions, your contributions go into the hybrid 457 deferred comp account. If you make those voluntary contributions, your employer puts additional funds into the hybrid 401a cash match account. The match is dollar for dollar on your first 1% of voluntary contributions, and then it is a 50% match. So if you put in the full 4% voluntary, you get a 2.5% match. Stephen?
Thank you, Sally. Let's look a little bit more at the different contribution opportunities in the hybrid retirement plan. So, like it's not working. The far right column shows the 4% mandatory contribution that goes into the defined benefit component. And then you have the second and third columns from the left are for the mandatory 1% from both you and City of Richmond that goes into the hybrid 401a cash match plan. So if you wanted to, that's where you could stop. 5% from you, and that would get the 1% mandatory from the employer. But to maximize the hybrid retirement plan, you want to make voluntary contributions. And that lighter column right there in the middle, the third from the right, that's the hybrid 457. That's the voluntary contribution that you make into the plan. As Sally mentioned, you can do 0.5% up to a maximum of 4%. And any voluntary contribution that you make will receive an employer matching contribution, which is the column to the right of the 457 contribution. And that contribution also goes into the hybrid 401a cash match plan. So the hybrid 401a cash match plan has potentially 3 sources of contributions. And when you are in the plan and you look at the contribution detail, you will see the 3 different types. That has to be identified for you. And only your voluntary contribution goes into the hybrid 457. So if you look across the bottom row, where it says 9% on the left for the employee, that is the maximum that you can contribute into the hybrid retirement plan. Pardon me. But remember, you have the employer contributions that are going in as well. And that's another 3.5%. Again, the 1% mandatory employer contribution. And because you're doing the maximum voluntary, you're receiving the maximum employer match of 2.5%. Here you see some benefits of increasing contributions into the hybrid retirement plan. You'll notice that every column, the largest component of that column is that gold color, and that represents the cumulative investment earnings. And that's what you want to tap into on the defined contribution component. You want to grow that account as much as you can. And when you retire, you will have that sum of money. In this case, you'll have 2 sums of money because the hybrid 401a cash match and the hybrid 457 are actually separate retirement plans within the defined contribution component, which is within the hybrid retirement plan. Simple, right? And We will have you invest, grow the money, and you see the cumulative investment earnings there. That's what you want to tap into. But it doesn't matter if you do the maximum voluntary and get all of the maximum matching, or the just the mandatory contribution. The largest component in this is looking at the career, 30 years. The earnings were about 6% annually. That's what you want to tap into. I did see a hand a moment ago, but please hold your questions till the end. That's when we'll be taking all questions. Well, you may want to go right to the 4%, but your budget might say otherwise. And we recognize that. So you can utilize Smart Step to 4% as a way to do systematic increases and gradually build up to that 4% maximum. That's your goal, to get to the 4% maximum as soon as your budget will allow. But this is the way to get there if the budget doesn't allow you to do what you might want to do right from the start. And what you do is you designate the amount of the contribution increase. Again, it's done in 0.5% increments. You also decide when during the year that you would want that to take effect. Now, the contributions in the hybrid 457, the voluntary contributions, are processed on a quarterly processing cycle. So in the last quarter of the month, last calendar quarter of the month, on the 15th is the processing cutoff. So any contributions made during that quarter have the final processing after the 4 p.m. cutoff on the 15th, and it is effective the first pay period of the following month. So we're currently in the fourth quarter cycle. That cycle closes December 15th at 4 p.m., and any changes that have been made in the fourth quarter cycle will be effective first pay period in January. There's also the hybrid paycheck calculator available on the plan website. And this is an excellent way to see in advance what the impact of a contribution change would be on your paycheck, so you can see how that would impact things. Smart Step should not be confused with auto escalation. That's because auto escalation is a plan provision and applies to all hybrid plan members that are not already scheduled to make the maximum 4% voluntary contribution. Auto escalation occurs every 3 years. And the way it works is that if a hybrid member is not scheduled for the 4% voluntary, they will automatically be escalated after the fourth quarter cycle close for the auto escalation period. As you can see on the slide, the last auto escalation was earlier this year. It went into effect in January of 2023. So in December 15th of 2022, there was an opt-out opportunity if you didn't want auto escalation to occur. If you didn't opt out, then effective in January after the December 15th close, you will automatically escalate it by 0.5%. The good news is auto escalation won't be coming around again until 2026, but there's lots of notification around the auto escalation process. So you might be wondering, why should you save? Well, this is going to be your primary retirement plan if you elect to join the hybrid plan. So you probably want to have a sense of what you're saving for. As you can see on the slide, in 2021, the average Social Security annual benefit was under $20,000 a year. You are going to have a fantastic retirement on $20,000 a year. As Sally mentioned, the income from VRS, your pension, again, this is a second source of lifetime income, just like Social Security, but the amount that you're going to receive is going to be based on the benefit formula, but you will have that lifetime income available. So we use this as a model to depict all of the opportunities for retirement income. The first two legs, the pension and Social Security. Third leg on the stool is personal savings. That would be things like the defined contribution component in the hybrid plan, IRA accounts. Maybe you have a 401k or a 403b from prior employment, and other savings that you may have allocated for use in retirement. Now, what many current retirees have reported to us is that those first three legs that I just mentioned don't always provide full income that meets their retirement income needs. Some of the reasons for this is that we're living longer, the effects of inflation, eroding purchasing power, especially in those later years in retirement. So they're reporting that they have what we call a retirement income gap. And when there's a gap, it has to be filled. You don't have enough income to live your desired lifestyle in retirement. So the way that that gap is being filled, that fourth leg of the stool, is something called supplemental income. Supplemental income, some of you will probably already know where this is going, but supplemental income is working in retirement, part-time, full-time, doesn't matter. But because you have that gap, you don't have enough retirement income, you need to do something to close that gap, and that something is working. Now, I do want to make one distinction here, though. I know a lot of retirees will go back into the workforce, but not because they need the money, because they want something to do, they're bored, what have you, they want to help out in society. That's not what I'm talking about. That's because you're doing that because you want to. What I'm referring to is the need. You have to get additional income. Ideally, we would get started early as opposed to later. There is a cost to waiting. Um, in the example, Sarah, the young lady, she started saving in the plan at age 25. She contributed for 15 years until age 40. Then she stopped contributing, but she left her money in the account to continue to get the compound investment earnings. The gentleman, Michael, he started and contributed significantly more than Sarah did over his working career, but he got less. And the investment was the same, the cumulative performance was the same, the return 6%. The difference was time, that compound investment earnings. That's what you want to tap into. That's why you want to get to the 4% as soon as your budget will allow. That's how you can be more like Sarah and less like Michael. But at whatever age you are, you do want to get started. The cost of waiting only goes up, and the benefits can be achieved wherever you are in your journey in terms of when you get started. All of the contributions in the hybrid retirement plan are pre-tax contributions. Pre-tax contributions reduce your current taxable income. So there's less of an impact on your paycheck. And this will be reflected also in the hybrid paycheck calculator that I referenced earlier. Now, another way that you can bring money into the plan is through a plan rollover. You see the list of the eligible plan types from prior employment that can be rolled into the hybrid retirement plan. All plan rollovers must and can only go into the hybrid 457. It does not have to be a 457 plan that you're rolling in. Whatever the plan type, again, the eligible plans are listed there, can only go into the hybrid 457. Rollovers are not allowed into the hybrid 401k cash match plan. Something else that you will want to take into consideration if you do a rollover is that a rollover is a form of distribution. So because you are distributing that other plan by rolling it into the hybrid 457, you do not lose the ability to do what's called an in-service distribution of the rollover assets only. So you can keep that in consideration as you are considering if you have a rollover or not. Additional savings opportunities. I mentioned in my introduction that you have a 457 plan administered by Mission Square Retirement that the city of Richmond provides. That plan will continue to be available to you if you transition over to the hybrid retirement plan. And this is important because remember I've talked about how the contributions in the hybrid 457 are capped at that 4% of salary level. That cap would not allow you to contribute to the IRS annual contribution limit if you wanted to contribute to that limit or just contribute more toward your retirement. We're in December, so I'll just go right to the 2024 limits. The limits for 2024 for everybody is 23,000. And then for those who are age 50 or older, they're eligible for the age 50 catch-up contribution, which is another 7,500 on top of that. So that limit is 30,500. So if you wanted to contribute to your eligible annual limit, you would need to max out the hybrid 457, and you want to do that first to take advantage of the employer match. And then you would do the balance in the city of Richmond 457, which is provided by Mission Square Retirement. Again, that's a separate team. We know about each other, but neither of us can talk about the other situation. Well, this is a tax-deferred savings and investment plan, so let's spend a little time talking about the investments. The VRS defined contribution plans are built on these asset classes. Cash equivalents and stable values are short-term, highly liquid securities that are intended to take minimal risk and basically hold on to what you have accumulated over time. The challenge here or the risk here is that it may not keep pace with inflation. Next are bonds. Bonds are loans to an organization, and they have more moderate risk, but also can provide diversification and offset the higher risk found in stock investing. The challenge here is, again, it provides that diversification, but it works generally opposite of how stocks work. So generally, when stocks are performing well, bonds are not performing well. It does reverse sometimes, and bonds will be the higher performer, and then stocks will not be performing as well. Both are in a market, but the market is less volatile for bonds than it is for stocks. And then every so often we have years like we had last year in 2022, where both stocks and bonds were both down. The growth engine are stock investing. These have more risk, but it also has the potential for the greater returns. And we've looked at different return opportunities. I mentioned 6% was the annual return. That 6% return is achieved by investing in stocks, and that's based on historical data. So shares of ownership in a company, as I said, highest degree of risk, but the highest opportunity for growth. So there are three strategies or pathways that are available to you in the VRS defined contribution plans. First are the do it for me strategy, which utilizes target retirement date portfolios. Each of these individual investment options is a diversified portfolio in and of itself. Diversification is the best tool that we have to manage risk. There is some type of risk with all investment choices. And because this is a self-managed program, you have to manage that risk by putting together your investment portfolio. So the target date portfolios all have underlying asset classes within the portfolio. They all use the same underlying asset classes. They're just in different proportion given where you are relative to your career journey. So someone starting out, there would be in the 2065 portfolio, nice long time horizon. That portfolio is more than 99% growth oriented, investing in stocks. However, somebody who is of retirement age 65, and at the end of their career, they would be in a more moderate portfolio. The retirement portfolio only has about 32, 35% of the portfolio invested for growth. The other thing about the do it for me path or the target date portfolios is that those are the default investment options in the plan. Again, this is a mandatory enrollment. We cannot wait for you to tell us how you want to invest your money. We are required by regulation to invest your money as soon as we receive it. So you are going to be defaulted to a target date portfolio, and that default is going to be based on your year of birth, and it's going to correspond to when you would be age 65 or closest thereto without going over. Now, that does not mean that you have to retire on the date of that target date portfolio. That's just going to determine what the mix of the underlying asset classes is for you. You can change to another target date portfolio, or if you want to be more hands-on and build your portfolio, you can use the second strategy, the help me do it strategy, where you would pick from these 10 investment options and you would build the portfolio. You could even choose to pick just one of these and have 100% of your account invested in one investment option. This is self-managed, that is your choice. However, if you did that, you would not have diversification and you would be entirely dependent upon the performance of that particular investment option. And as we've discussed, the investments go up and down. Every year there's a top performing asset class, there's a bottom performing asset class, and everything else falls somewhere in between. And usually it's totally different every year, and we don't know what year an individual asset class is going to be the top performer. These two strategies make the core investment options. You have a third opportunity, and that is the self-directed brokerage account or the do-it-myself strategy. This strategy is intended for knowledgeable investors that don't want assistance in managing their investment portfolio and want to take on all of the risk of investing. Sally mentioned that VRS is the overall plan administrator, they're the sponsor, and they have something called due diligence that they have to perform. And they do that on the first two strategies, the core investment options, making sure that those investment choices are suitable for the plan and have a reasonable cost. That due diligence goes out the window in the self-directed brokerage account. So not VRS, not City of Richmond, not Mission Square Retirement. Nobody is making sure that those investments in the self-directed brokerage account are suitable for you, suitable for the plan. You also have to maintain a minimum balance at all times in the core investment options before you can utilize a self-directed brokerage account. You see it listed there at the bottom of the screen, 2,500. And also trades and transactions are done in minimal increments of $1,000. So you would need to have at least 3,500 in your plan before you would even be able to find how to do the self-directed brokerage account if you were so interested. There are some costs you want to be aware of. First is the record keeping fee. And this is a deduction from the account balance on a monthly basis, approximately $2.54 a month, resulting in a annual charge of $30.50 a year. That second bullet is very important. If you have more than one Commonwealth of Virginia defined contribution plan, you only pay one record keeping fee. Guess how many defined contribution plans you have? You have two, the hybrid 401A cash match and the hybrid 457. They are two separate plans within the defined contribution component, only one record keeping fee. The next thing you want to be aware of are the investment management fees or the expense ratios. All plans like this have expense ratios, and you'll be pleased to know that the expense ratio in the VRS defined contribution plans is exceptionally low. The stock fund, for example, 0.01%. How does 10 cents on $1,000 sound? Not too bad, right? I'm going to turn the mic back over to Sally to talk about some benefit payments.
Thank you, Stephen. So Stephen's been giving you all the good information on the defined contribution part of the plan where you're going to be managing how your money is invested. But we're going to look now back at the defined benefit part of the plan. Remember, the defined benefit component is sort of the foundation of the plan because this is the part that provides the lifetime monthly pension benefit. In order to qualify for this lifetime monthly benefit, you have to be vested. And in the defined benefit part of the plan, that means 5 years of service credit under the VRS. So you have to have at least 5 years of VRS creditable service to be eligible to be vested in whatever benefit you've earned. And the benefit is based on a formula. The formula is 1% times your average final compensation times your years of credible service. Your average final compensation is a 5-year average. It's the average of the 60 consecutive months in your VRS salary history that gives the highest annual average. So it doesn't have to be the last 5 years, but it's the 5 consecutive years that gives the highest average. And when we calculate that benefit, the 1% times your service times your average final compensation, divide by 12, that's the monthly unreduced retirement benefit that you would be eligible for. You're eligible for that full formula calculated benefit when you meet unreduced retirement eligibility. If you take an early retirement benefit, there is a reduction factor applied to that calculation because you're starting the benefit early. The earliest you can retire is at age 60 with 5 years of service. To get the full unreduced retirement benefit, there are 2 ways you can qualify for that. One is to reach your Social Security normal retirement age and have at least 5 years of service credit. The other is to meet what we call the Rule of 90. The Rule of 90 is a special rule where if you take your age and service and add it together, if it totals 90 or more, then you're eligible for an unreduced benefit earlier than your Social Security retirement age. For example, if you were 58 with 32 years of service under the VRS, or age 60 with 30 years, age 62 with 28 years, as long as that age and service totals 90, you can get the full formula calculation with no reduction factor applied if you retire prior to your Social Security normal retirement age. Your Social Security normal retirement age is based on your year of birth, and this chart shows you what that would be. If your date of birth is 1960 or later, your unreduced benefit for Social Security is age 67. Now, when we calculate that benefit under that formula, that amount that we get is what's called the basic benefit. That's the monthly amount you would receive for your lifetime. When you actually retire, you will have some other options available to you. There is a survivor option where you receive a reduced benefit, but after your death, a benefit is continued to your named survivor for their lifetime. The partial lump sum option payment, which is commonly referred to as PLOP, that is a special option that you actually have to qualify for. You have to actually work 1, 2, or 3 years past your unreduced retirement date in order to qualify for this option. If you qualify for this option and you elect this, you get an upfront payment of 1, 2, or 3 years worth of your basic benefit in a lump sum upfront. Because you're getting that lump sum payment up front, however, that means that your monthly benefits are reduced for your lifetime. The advanced pension and the PLOP option and the survivor option can be taken in conjunction with each other. So you could actually take both. And then there would be 2 reductions, one for taking the PLOP option and then another reduction for the survivor option. The advanced pension option is a standalone option. You can't take this in conjunction with the other options. It's a special option for people who are retiring prior to Social Security normal retirement age, and it's designed to give you a more level stream of income before and after your Social Security benefits begin. If you choose this option, when you retire, you get a temporarily an increased benefit, and then at the age you have selected to have the benefit reduced, which will be sometime between age 62 and your Social Security normal retirement age. At that date, there is a permanent reduction in the benefit for the rest of your life. Now, a lot of times people ask what happens if I leave my employment and I'm not eligible to retire, or I'm eligible to retire and I just don't want to start my benefit yet. Well, as long as you leave your member contribution account in the plan, you are a deferred member of the hybrid plan. Now, remember that member contribution account is the account that your 4% mandatory contribution goes into. It gets interest added to it, and that account is record kept at the Virginia Retirement System. As long as you leave that account in the plan, you keep your VRS membership and your service credit. If you're eligible to retire, you keep your rights to any retiree benefits, including your lifetime benefit. If you are vested, if you've got at least 5 years of service credit, you are entitled to whatever benefit you've earned under that formula based on the service that you have in your record. As long as you leave your member contribution account in the plan, you keep your rights to that. Even if you're not vested, if you leave that member contribution account in the plan, you remain a deferred member of the hybrid plan and you keep your VRS service credit. But what happens if you decide you want to take your money out? Well, that member contribution account, if you want to take that money out, you can. It's your money and interest, so you can take that out. That is called taking a refund. But if you take a refund, there are plan implications. You take a refund and you're eligible for retirement, you forfeit your lifetime pension benefit and all other VRS retiree benefits. If you're vested and you forfeit your service credit, if you're vested but not eligible to retire and you take a refund, you forfeit whatever lifetime benefit you've earned, you forfeit all of your VRS service and your hybrid plan membership. And if you're not vested, you're forfeiting your membership and service credit. When you do this and you later come back to a VRS covered position, that means that you will be starting over again with zero service, and you'll be in whatever plan happens to be in effect when you come back. So you potentially could be in a different plan. The other thing you need to remember is that there are tax implications. The money has been put in the plan on a pre-tax basis. Because it's in the plan on the pre-tax basis, you do have an option to roll the funds over to another qualified plan or an IRA to defer taxes. But if you take a taxable distribution, you're going to have to pay taxes. You're going to pay regular tax, potentially regular taxes, and then potentially an additional 10% tax for taking the funds out of the plan early. Taxable distributions are subject to upfront 20% federal and 4% Virginia tax withholding. The other implication about taking a refund is it can also impact your funds in the defined contribution part of the plan.
Thank you, thank you, Sally. As you can see, there is a vesting schedule that applies to the defined contribution component as well. We're about halfway through, so just continue to think of pretty much two of everything when we're talking about the hybrid retirement plan. So we've got vesting that Sally's talked about on the defined benefit side of things. There's also vesting on the defined contribution side of things. The vesting on the defined contribution side has a little bit different meaning, and it's a different schedule. There's no vesting on the defined contribution side for the first 2 years of service. And then once you have completed 2 years of service, as you can see, you become 50% vested. 3 years, 75, and 4 years, 100% vested. Now, the vesting here means ownership. How much of that money do you get to keep if you were to leave your VRS covered employment? The vesting only applies to the employer money. You are always 100% vested in any monies that you pay into the plans. So the vesting means ownership. You are fully vested in the employer money after 4 years of service. Again, the money has gone into your account from day one. You get to manage it from day one, but it's about how much of it do you get to keep should you leave your VRS covered employment. Of course, the easy way to manage this is to stay 5 years. You're fully vested in the pension. You're fully vested on the defined contribution side, and you don't have to worry about it. So talking about taking money out of the plan, when we talked about rollovers in, I mentioned that you can get that money as an in-service distribution, but that's the only money that you can access while you are an active employee. But once you separate from service and are no longer in a VRS covered position, and I hope you notice I said separate from service. I did not say retire. That's because you are eligible to access the defined contribution money when you have separated from service and are no longer an active employee in a VRS covered position and have been separated for 1 full calendar month. When that occurs, you can get every penny of that defined contribution money if you wish to do so. However, the best thing to do might be that first bullet. Leave the money in the plan. You can do that. You would continue to be able to manage how it is invested. The only thing that would change is that there would not be any new money, excuse me, there would not be any new money coming into the plan. And we talked about the low expense ratios before. This might be a very good opportunity. But if you do decide to take money out, you are going to decide the how and the when that you take the money out. You can take it all out in one lump sum payment. You can set up periodic payments. Periodic payments can be monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or even an annual periodic payment. You can do partial lump sum distributions where you reach in and, oh, tree fell on the house. I need to put on a new roof. Need 5,000 for the roof. I don't know if roofs cost 5,000, but you can do partial lump sums. You decide the how and the when. You can combine the two. You can also purchase an annuity and create another source of guaranteed income. You are going to have total control on how you access this money. You control that. Now, Sally mentioned that there may be an early distribution penalty tax if you take a refund of your service. That also may apply for the money. Better. I try to move, to not block the screen all the time. But that may apply if you take money from the hybrid 401k cash match plan. That plan is subject to the early distribution penalty tax if you have not reached age 59 and a half and an exception does not apply. From the hybrid 457, from your voluntary contributions, there is never, under no circumstances, is there an early distribution penalty tax applied. That's one of the unique features of 457 plans that the IRS has written into the tax code. Sally mentioned the example of an unreduced benefit, age 58 with 32 years of service. Well, that's too early to get Medicare, the health insurance. So we do see VRS members, we do see hybrid members that qualify for that early retirement before Medicare kicks in, or before Medicare is available, I should say, and they will use money from the 457 to pay for health insurance because it's not subject to the uh, early distribution penalty tax. So again, you control the how and the when the money comes out, but these are things that you can manage. There's a few other things you want to consider too.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about a few other things under the hybrid plan. First of all, you remember on that defined benefit part of the plan where you get the lifetime monthly pension benefit. It's calculated using a formula, and one of the things in that formula is your years of service credit. Well, there's actually a way that you can purchase service and have it added to your record. There's very special rules about this. You can't just purchase service because you want to, but you have to be active. The service that you purchase cannot entitle you to a benefit from another retirement plan. And when you purchase service and it's added to your record, that service is used for purposes of calculating your VRS benefits as well as determining your vesting on both parts of the plan. There's certain types of service that are unlimited. This means that if you have these types of service available, you can purchase as much as is available. Refunded service is like we talked about a few minutes ago. If you left a VRS covered position and you took a refund of your member contribution account, you forfeited your membership and service credit. If you come back in a VRS covered position in the hybrid plan, you can purchase all of that refunded service and it will go in your record under the hybrid plan. And then no cost military leave. If you're called up for military service and you come back under the plan rules, you can apply for that military leave service, no cost, and you can purchase all that's available. And then there's certain times when you would have workers' comp leave when you don't have service credit, and you can purchase all of that service that's available when you're back active. The types of service listed here are limited. You can purchase in all of these 6 categories of service. You can purchase in all categories, but all of them combined, you are limited to a total of 48 months of service. So the most you can purchase is 48 months of all of these 6 types of service listed here. State public service would be like service with another state prior to coming to VRS. Federal service would be salaried civilian service with federal government. Non-covered services, like for example, if you were with a VRS employer, but you were part-time, you were a wage employee, and so you weren't covered under the VRS. And then there are certain types of leave when you come back that you can purchase. But again, all of those types combined, limited to 48 months. The third category of purchasing service is active duty military service. You can purchase another up to 48 months of active duty military service as long as you're not entitled to a military pension based on that service. When you purchase service, you have to pay for it. And we're going to talk about refunded service in a moment, but for all of the other types of service, you have a 2-year cost window to purchase service based on the plan's approximate normal cost. This means that you know what the cost is. Currently, that approximate normal cost is 6.78%. So for each month that you have to purchase, you would pay 6.78% of your pay for each month you purchase. You have a 2-year window to purchase at that approximate normal cost. After anything you have not purchased at the end of the 2-year window goes into an actuarial cost. An actuarial cost is a more individualized calculation and is going to take into account the specific cost to the plan of putting that service in your record and providing an increased benefit, potentially an earlier retirement date. All of those things are factored into that cost, and it can be higher than that normal cost. Now we're going to talk about the refunded service. Refunded service does not have a cost window. You can purchase your refunded service at any time while you're active, but to purchase refunded service, you have to repay the amount you got as a refund plus interest. That interest is compounded annually from when you took the refund to when you pay it back, and that interest rate currently is 6.75%. Those interest rates for both the normal cost and the refunded service, those rates change from time to time. If you want to purchase service, you have a variety of ways to pay for it. You can pay for your service in a lump sum. You can use personal funds. You can use rollover funds like from an IRA or another qualified plan. You can also set up a payroll agreement where it comes out of your paycheck, or you can use a combination of the two. Payroll agreements have some special rules you want to be aware of. You can purchase 1, 2, 3, or 4 months per month during a payroll agreement. A payroll agreement cannot exceed 12 months. So if you had service available to you and you set up, let's say you had 48 months available, if you set up a 1-year payroll agreement and 1 month per month, you can purchase 12 months. At the end of that payroll agreement, any cost for the remaining service would be recalculated. So like if you had refunded service at the end of that year, it's going to be recalculated and the cost per month would be higher because there's going to be more interest added to it. The VSDP is a disability program for state employees, which y'all would not be participating in, but you would be participating in the Virginia Local Disability Program. The Virginia Local Disability Program provides short-term and long-term disability benefits. It does have a long-term care provision in it, and it's meant to get you back to work as soon as possible if you're able. There's information on the website on this program. We mention these programs because VRS employers sometimes change employers, and the VSDP and the VLDP both have a 1-year waiting period before you are eligible for non-work related short-term disability benefits. So you want to be aware of that 1-year waiting period. If you ever change VRS employers, you would have to resatisfy this 1-year waiting period, and you might want to consider some interim coverage in the meantime. One other thing. Some employers did not elect to join VLDP, and so they might have a different plan. So if you ever look at changing VRS employers, you'd want to consider that too when you talk to any other VRS employers. Both VSDP and VLDP do have long-term care coverage, so that's an additional benefit of those programs, and that coverage can be continued into retirement. Also under the hybrid plan, you're covered by the VRS Basic Life Insurance. Basic Life Insurance is your base rate of pay rounded up $1,000 times 2. There are other benefits associated with the Basic Life Insurance, and we would refer you to the website for more information on this. You also have optional life insurance available for both yourself and your spouse and dependent children. You can elect optional life insurance up to 8 times your pay, up to $800,000. And your coverage for your spouse and dependent children depends on the option that you choose. Another benefit we want to talk about related to the defined benefit part of the plan is the death in service provision. If you pass away while you are active, there are some special rules called for the death in service, and the rules depend on whether or not you are vested when you pass away and whether or not the death is work related or not. If you are vested and it is not work related, then the benefit that's payable depends on who you have named as your beneficiary for your member contribution account. If you have named a spouse, minor child, or parent in that order of precedence, they take precedence over everybody else. So a spouse takes precedence over the children and parents. For example, if you name spouse and parent 50-50, and you pass away, only your spouse gets a benefit, and they would get a choice of a refund of your member contribution account or a monthly benefit, and your parent would not receive anything. If you're not vested, then we would only pay a refund of what's in your member contribution account to whoever you've designated as the beneficiary. If your death is work related, then the refund is payable to your named beneficiary, but then your spouse, minor child, parent in that order of precedence would also be eligible for a monthly benefit. So we point this out because when you do your beneficiary designations on that member contribution account, it's not as simple as I name this person and they're going to get the money in my account. So you want to think about that a little bit when you make your beneficiary designations. And we'll talk about beneficiary designations that can be done online, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But now Stephen's going to talk about beneficiary designations for your defined contribution accounts.
Thank you, Sally. So we talked about that you have an account. You have two accounts, the hybrid 401A cash match and the hybrid 457. You need to make beneficiary designations, and upon your passing, who you have designated as the beneficiary will receive the entire balance of the account. Now, we talked about the hybrid 401A, the employer contributions needing to be vested. So if you have not vested in some of the employer contributions, again, that money is in your account, but you don't own it yet. So if you were to pass on, only your vested amounts, which would be your contribution and any employer contribution that you have vested in, would be paid to your designated beneficiary. The key is doing the beneficiary designations because we have to distribute the account balance per the beneficiary designations on file. It does not go through probate. It is not subject to a will. And the reason I bring this up, and it happens more than you would imagine, but you may have done that beneficiary designation when you first began your employment. That may have been many years ago. And I know that we're talking about the transition, but the example still is valid. And you forget about it. And years later is when you pass on. And there may have been significant life changes between when you started and when you pass on, such as a divorce, maybe two or three. But who's on your beneficiary record is that first loving spouse that you had many years ago. Guess what? If you don't update the beneficiary designations, and that's who is listed, that's who's going to get the beneficiary award. And that current spouse is not going to be very happy, so they may dig you up again and kill you again.
Okay, so now we're going to look a little bit at your account, how to access your online accounts and some of the resources that are available to you under the hybrid plan. Now, we've talked a lot about two parts to the plan. Well, one thing we want to refer to first is this varetire.org/hybrid. This is a public website. So you can go out there and look on this public website and get all sorts of information about the plan. And we encourage you to do that. It's got a lot of information about the plan and how it works. And there's also the thing that's circled here for education. There's some general education unrelated to retirement that you can also access on this website. But the other thing you can access on this website are your online accounts. Now, the hybrid plan has two parts to it. There's a defined benefit component and a defined contribution component. Your defined benefit money's record kept at the VRS, your defined contribution money's record kept at Mission Square. So guess what? You have two online accounts to set up. Your My VRS account links to VRS and gives you a lot of overall plan information. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but just be aware you also have a second online account that links to Mission Square called DCP Account Access that's used differently because it's for your defined contribution part of the plan. Your My VRS account, again, links to VRS. This is the login page, and we encourage everyone to set up your My VRS account so that you can access information about your overall plan benefits. You would use your My VRS account for designating beneficiaries for your life insurance as well as your member contribution account. The home page for the hybrid plan, look, this is an example. It's going to give you an estimate of your unreduced retirement date and a projection of your defined benefit at that time. You can see all of your account balances on your home page. This is the only place where you will see your member contribution account balance in the defined benefit part of the plan. We report the recent balances in the defined contribution part of the plan. That's for information only. You can just see your balances. You can't do anything with that part of the plan. So your MyVRS account is sort of an overall picture. It's used for retirement planning. There is a benefit estimator tool. There is a retirement planning tool. Depending on the type of service you have to purchase, you can use your MyVRS account to get estimates of what happens if you were to purchase service and the cost. There's a link to VRS Financial Wellness, which takes you to some information that may be of interest to you about insurance, credit, all sorts of financial topics that you can research here. And then there are other features such as if you get ready to retire, there is an online retirement process where it takes you step by step through the process, counseling steps along the way. You can actually do an online retirement with no paperwork at all.
Thank you, Sally. So we've been focusing on this, how there are two of us, two of everything. But what I am most concerned about when it comes to your online access is the defined contribution login, as you see circled on screen. That is where you need to go to manage the defined contribution component. That is where you need to go if you want to do voluntary contributions. And this is going to be your friend. You do everything online here. And whenever I do this presentation, not just here, but all over, there are many, many facets and components and things that I need to think about. And as Sally was speaking, I remembered something that I need to speak to you all about relative to your login. Because as we talked about earlier, you have a 457 plan available through Mission Square Retirement. That will still be available to you. That has a login. Guess what? This login for the hybrid 457, in terms of the voluntary contribution, but for the defined contribution component, yes, it is provided through Mission Square Retirement. But no, you would not be able to access the City of Richmond 457 through this login. That's a change that happened fairly recently, but I remembered that it would apply here. So this is what it will look like once you create your login credentials and log into your defined contribution login. This is your account dashboard, and you will see your defined contribution component plans listed here. And I know because of the distance, it may be a little bit small, but the circle is on the hybrid 457. And that's very important because very frequently we'll get calls or we'll be talking with folks, and I logged into my account and I wanted to do voluntary contributions, but I couldn't find where to do it. And when I hear that, I immediately think two things. They either were logged into my VRS and you can't do anything on the defined contribution side on your my VRS account. Yes, as Sally said, you can see the balances, but that's all you can do. That's information purposes. The other is because they know they've got the contribution going into the hybrid 401A, the mandatory contribution, they're going there, trying to do the voluntary contribution in the hybrid 401A cash match. And you won't find a way to change the contribution in the hybrid 401A. So you must go to the hybrid 457 and click the drop down there, go to change contribution. That's where you need to find it. You also can manage your beneficiary designations. And as we've said, you need to set up your beneficiary designations on both sides of the plan. Same plan, but if you enter it for the defined benefit, it's not going to carry over. It's not going to transfer over to the defined contribution side. You must do the defined contribution beneficiary designations. And the best way to do that is through your online account access. Here's a look at our team that is available. Your representative will be Mr. Homer Stinson that you see there kind of in the middle of the screen. You see his territory. All of us on the team are available to assist you, can answer your questions. We all have individual virtual links where you can schedule an individual virtual meeting with us, and we are always happy to assist. You can take your retirement on the go. You know, we've come into the 21st century just like the rest of the world, so you do have an app that you can utilize on your smartphone. It's VRS space DCP to find that app. And you can do pretty much everything that you can do on a computer, you can do on the smartphone. However, the layout and the processing of it is a little bit different, but it is there available for you. Here you see the contact information for both the defined benefit and the defined contribution components of the plan. You have the email address there for defined benefit component, and you can go to their counseling center. They do take appointments now. They do see folks by appointment now on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. The defined contribution component, we also have a walk-in center here in downtown Richmond. And there you do not need an appointment. You can walk in between the hours of 8:30 and 5. In terms of telephone access, you can reach Mission Square Retirement 8:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday when the New York Stock Exchange is open. And for VRS, 8:30 to 5. There is financial planning services available through your VRS membership. You see at the bottom of the screen, varetire.org/make-a-plan. That is the link for the financial planning services. And that banner that you see on screen, that gold banner, that actually appears on your defined contribution account dashboard if you scroll down the page. And that banner is actually the link. So if you were to click on the banner, you would see all of the information available on the link and the different services that are available there.
Thank you, Stephen. And so we're just going to go again back to the main public website, varetire.org/hybrid. Again, we encourage you to visit the site. There's information there about the plan. There is a link to the handbook. There is a hybrid plan learning channel, has some really short videos you can watch. It goes over some of the basics of the plan and how it works. You can access all of this information whenever you want. There are live and recorded webinars available that you can register for. So again, this public website has a lot of information, and we do encourage you to visit that for more information. We've covered a lot of information in this session. We know that it's a lot of information, but to sort of summarize, when you're in the hybrid plan, we encourage you to register for your MyVRS account so that you've secured your credentials and name your beneficiaries for your defined benefit part of the plan and your life insurance. If you need to purchase additional life insurance, consider those needs and look into that. If you have service available to purchase, we always encourage you to look into that sooner rather than later. You're not required to purchase it, but you want to know whether or not it's, what's available and sort of what the implications might be and the costs might be for that. You also want to set up your DCP online account so that you can access your information about your defined contribution accounts, and get your investment information, beneficiary designations. And again, as Stephen mentioned, once you're in the hybrid plan at the maximum 4%, you can still save in that Richmond 457 plan. And you always want to make sure you're keeping your investment options up to date. And Stephen and his team will help with that. And at this point, we're open for questions. Louisa?
All right, hi everybody. Okay, so we have questions in the in-person audience and probably virtually as well. This is the way it will work so that we switch between the audiences and have some ground rules for Q&A. We do ask for the in-person audience, if you could come up to the podium, line up. We'll take 3 questions from the in-person, then switch over to the virtual, 3 questions from the virtual audience. And just to let you know, if you end up having to leave, please make sure that you take a flyer in the back. We have a flyer related to the hybrid plan with dates and information about the 457 component. Just make sure that you do grab that. We also have the election forms available. So if you are a general employee in the DC plan, that's Form 5. And then we also have forms if you do happen to be in the defined benefit plan. But please make sure that you ask one of us about that. If you're in the virtual audience, we have the forms available online, and we can put the link to the web page that contains the forms in the chat for you. All right, so let's start with our Q&A. Folks in the in-person audience, we'll start with you. So if you could please come up to the podium and go ahead and ask your question. Please try to keep it general and ask your full question up front so we don't have a ton of follow-up questions. Yes.
Hi. I'm 73 years old and I've been with the city for 35 years.
35.
So, yes. So if I wanted to retire, what one of these plans would I go with? Could you tell me that?
Okay, what plan would you go into 35 years with the city?
Yeah.
And do you know if you're in the defined benefit plan? You don't know. So I think you should probably talk to RRS because it will depend on what plan you're currently in. Although I think you're a general employee, right? Okay, so you probably, if you don't have any prior VRS service, is that right? No? Then you would probably go into the hybrid plan. So you'll need to just verify with RRS, and in that case, do you have? That's correct. Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, you will have to make that choice for yourself. Yes, but you have the right form.
I understand under the hybrid plan, you're eligible to retire early at age 60 with 5 years or more of service. What is the reduced benefit factor? How is that factored?
I'll hand that over to VRS to answer.
Thank you. Yeah, so the reduction factors, we don't have the chart published anywhere, but there is a generic calculator on the VRS website where you can plug in your information and the retirement date, and it will show you what the reduction factor is in that calculation.
Okay, I tried using that calculator and it would show me the end benefit, but it wouldn't show me the reduction factors.
On the generic calculator,
Yes, on the VRS website.
was it reduced?
Yes, and I'm looking to understand by how much and what that factor is.
Okay, so again, I don't have a chart, but if you call VRS, we can walk you through that. We can walk you through that calculator and show you where to find that.
Okay, and is prior service with the city of Richmond eligible to be purchased through VRS?
No, I mean,
No, okay.
service.
Right. Service with the city is not available to be purchased in RRS. Other types of service under normal purchase rules would potentially be available for purchase, but not city service. You can't move your RS account over to VRS.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Beneficiaries. No spouse, but just your children. Like maybe you have 2 children. Will both of them be able to get 50-50?
So on the beneficiary designations, again, on that defined benefit part of the plan, if you are vested and the children are minors, there's a benefit payable to age 18. And then it's
If they're adults.
if they're adults, you can name anyone you want. The only thing you have to be aware of is that if you name a spouse, minor, child, or parent in that order of precedence, they would take precedence over anyone else you may have named. But if you don't have minor children, if you just name adult children, then they would get the amount in the member contribution account. There's just that there is never a monthly benefit ever paid to anyone other than a spouse, minor, child, or parent.
Okay. And if you decide you want to buy back your service from a refund, I think I missed the part about how much you have to, it depends on what you got back.
Right.
Is what you're paying back. Can you alternate the amount that you pay back during your pay period, season or whatever?
Okay, so if you previously were under the VRS and you took a refund and you want to purchase that refunded service, VRS has to calculate that cost for you. And the cost of refunded service, we're going to take the amount of the refund and add the interest to it and then divide by the number of months you have available to purchase to get a per month cost.
Okay.
So you would pay for it per month. That cost calculation cannot be done until you are active under the VRS and have been reported for at least 1 month by your employer.
Okay.
And for anyone who, let me just throw this in, for anyone who thinks they may ever have been under the VRS, we encourage you to call the VRS just to have us check our records to make sure that that you're clear on whether you were or weren't and what your status is, whether you took a refund or not. So you can always call the VRS to get information on what your current status might be under the VRS.
Thank you.
All right, before we take more questions, I do just want to mention what form you complete. I know a lot of people are interested in completing that right now, and that's totally fine. The form you complete is dependent on what RRS plan you are currently in, whether you're in the Defined Benefit Plan Basic, Defined Benefit Plan Enhanced, or the DC plan, and whether you're a general or sworn employee. So please make sure you complete the form appropriate to the RS plan that you are in now, and make sure that you turn it into to RS. Kia Johnson is here in person up front. Now, the other thing I'll mention is that if you are if you're going into the hybrid plan and you're electing to transition to VRS, you're a DC, you're defined contribution participant now, and you're going into the VRS hybrid plan, make sure that you turn in your form by December 8th so that you can make your 457 elections. That is this Friday. So just putting that deadline out there, December 8th. Okay. So we'll take two more questions in person. I think we have one online. Okay, so we'll two more questions in person.
Hi, good morning. So I was asking if you leave a VRS partnered institution, so let's just say if I left the city, and then go to another job that was in VRS, the money that was contributed does remain in the account, but does it accrue any type of interest or increase or decrease with the market at all?
Okay, so if you leave your VRS covered position, the money in the member contribution account in the defined benefit part of the plan gets 4% interest added to it
Okay.
after it's been in the plan over a year, and that is added once a year at the end of June.
Okay.
If you simply change from one VRS employer to another, you are just changing employers, and all of the money in all of your accounts, defined benefit and defined contribution, all stays in the plan.
Got
So if you're just changing VRS employers, you can't take your money out. If you're going outside of VRS, then you know, the plan rules for distribution supply, but that any money you leave in the member contribution account to keep your membership in service is going to get that 4% interest added.
Cool.
And then, of course, on the defined contribution side, it's invested.
Yes, it's invested. Again, you continue to be able to manage it even if you have left, and the investment earnings are going to be dependent upon what your investment selections were.
Okay.
But it's invested. Could go down though if you invested and you get one of those down stretches, but it will continue to get investment performance.
Cool. And then I have one more question. Can a beneficiary be made to a trust?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You mentioned the years of service to purchase. If you're a city employee, you cannot purchase city employee. What can you purchase?
So the service you can purchase would be like if you had public service, full-time service in another state, civilian service with the
Mhm.
federal government, active duty military service. Those are the types of service that are available to everyone to purchase.
Okay, and then when you do retire, you get 1% for every year vested in the system.
Yeah, so the formula is 1% times your years of VRS creditable service times your average final compensation. So
Okay.
like if 5 years, you would get 5%.
Okay, and we start over at 0 when we go in.
You're starting under the VRS, unless you had previous VRS service in your record. If you join the hybrid plan, you're starting with 0 service.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to take a virtual audience question because I made that promise. We'll get to you, so stay there.
Danetta Payne, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hello, yes, a quick question. How will you pay an employee for the time they already have frozen if they join VRS? And do you know if there's going to be an early buyout?
Can you repeat the first part of your question?
Yes, how will an employee be paid for for the time they already have frozen if they join VRS?
Okay, so as far as you said, how will they be paid? But what will happen is the account with RRS will stay put. It will
Okay.
just stay where it is. Yes, and it will, when you leave city service, if you have the DC plan, that account will become available to you, or if you, retire, it will become available to you. Wherever it stopped accruing the contributions and time. But it will have accrued interest and earnings during the time that it's been frozen and sitting put. So that's what will become available to you when you leave city service or retire.
And is
So
that the same?
essentially,
Sorry.
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Is it the same answer if you have the, if you don't have, if you have the deferred benefit? Is that the same? I mean, the defined benefit, is that the same, answer for that? It'll just stay put.
Right, it will stay put. The difference with defined benefit is that that becomes available to you when you file for retirement only. The defined contribution plan is when you leave city service or retire, is my understanding, but we can verify that with RRS. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. That's correct.
Okay.
All right, so we got our confirmation from ours. Thank you, Kia.
Thank you. And
right, does
also,
that
do you know, oh, I didn't, in the second part, do you know there will be like an early buyout for folks who can leave if retire if they're able to? Just buy them out?
RRS will answer this one.
All right.
That is not being, I have not heard anything about a voluntary retirement incentive program. If that would happen, it would have to go through council, but there's no early buyout at this time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Three more. Okay, we have a few more online, so we will take those.
Denise Carpenter, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Thank you. Yes, earlier when the gentleman asked about what he has 35 years, I assume he's in the defined benefit. I have 22. I'm in the defined benefit. And you said he would go to the hybrid plan, but the choices are to stay in Richmond retirement completely and get to retirement age, or go to the hybrid plan, correct? We go to the hybrid plan.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Every employee has a choice to stay in RRS or transition to VRS. In this case, he was asking about what would happen if he moved to VRS.
Right. And so he would, if that his option would be the hybrid plan. And when you move, if you were to move, do you get a year-to-year transfer, or do you kind of lose years in that transfer from Richmond to Virginia retirement?
So neither, right? So your
Or you
RRS
just
account
start from scratch, essentially, with
that's correct.
VRS, and you
start
keep, okay, gotcha. Okay, got, yep,
right.
I'm
You
sorry,
start
I
in
didn't mean to
VRS.
interrupt. I kind of
No,
thought
you're
of it as
fine.
I was talking.
You start in
Okay.
VRS at day 0, and then
0.
you begin earning time there, and your RRS time up to that
Stays.
point will just stop, and your account will stay frozen until you go to retire. Mhm.
And it stays frozen at what your credible years of service are currently. So that yearly update that we get from retirement that says, here's the number of years, here's if you retire now, as opposed to
Yep.
8 years. So if it freezes and you retire or separate service in 8 before then, and you wait 8 years, do you get what you would get at 65, in my case, say, or do you get what you would get if the day you left service? The monthly amount.
Oh, okay. So your time in
If you
RRS
stayed,
stops
yep.
when you move over to VRS. So your account, your years of service in RRS will be, let's say you moved, if you have 22 years now and you move now, it will be 22 years when
2
you
years.
retire
Okay.
in 8 years. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's do one more online. Bear with me, and then we'll get to the in-person.
Tabra Powell, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
I have just one quick question. Are you able to do individual appointments prior to going over to VRS? And I know I spoke with someone before went through the website and everything, and from my understanding, you have to already be in the system in order to speak with them about the VRS programs and everything, which I totally understand. But I know everyone's situation is different. So I wanted to know, is it a possibility that you could actually set up an appointment to speak with someone to go over your individual situation?
Yes, yes. So to clarify some things there, okay, so we are going to go live with individual counseling sessions starting next week,
Okay.
December 11th. So please look out for that. And that is retirement counseling in general. It's not specific to one system, but they will go over your individual circumstance, your plans for retirement, and that's going live next week. So please be on the lookout for emails related to that. The second
Okay.
thing is if you are talking about that VRS won't be able to meet with you, I think you're talking about VRS, that they won't be able to meet with you until you switch.
Yeah.
That may be more related to your VRS Navigator account and giving you information specifically related to if you needed to purchase other additional, purchase time under their normal purchase rules or things like that. Those are only things that they can inform you of after you've moved, but they do have a VRS service center that can take general questions if you have a prior account or if you want to know what plan you would go into, etc. Um,
Yeah.
so there are certain things that they can answer now, and there are certain things that they can only answer once you transition.
Right, I got you. And I just had one more quick question. If you have the 457 with the city, are you able to, let's just say for instance, if you wanted to take funds from that account and roll them over into VRS, is that something that you could, if you wanted to leave some one place and take the rest of it and put it over into that account too?
No, no. So
Okay.
the city's 457 plan will
Hmm.
remain as the city's 457 plan, and
Okay.
the 457 with the hybrid plan is over there. Now, to keep
Okay.
in mind, the 457 plans in general have a collective IRS maximum limit for the year. So just remember that when you're contributing, because you could still contribute to the city's 457 plan,
Hmm.
while even if you move to VRS. But
Okay.
you just have to keep that IRS limit in mind.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, we'll go to the in-person audience. Go ahead.
Former state employee. And when I left state government, I took all of my funds from VRS and reinvested my dollars. The question I have is, what plan am I eligible for at this particular time?
Okay, so if you were under the VRS and you took all of your money, you took a refund of your member contribution account, then you would come in the hybrid plan.
Okay.
But again, you might just to be sure, call VRS and just confirm, that is what happened.
That
There,
is what happened.
well, I mean, the only reason why I say that is there can be multiple accounts like the 450s. There can be another plan you may have taken money out of, but we're specifically talking about the defined benefit member contribution account. And if you took your money out of that, you forfeited all of your service and your membership, and you would be in the hybrid.
The hybrid plan? Okay. And Stephen, thank you for the information you provided as well. I'm not quite sure concerning the voluntary portion of it, the maximum amount. I think you said was 9%.
The voluntary contribution maximum is 4%. So you're going to make a mandatory contribution of 5%, and then you can make voluntary contributions up to 4%. For
Total of 9. Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you very much.
I have a question for members who were in RRS and are choosing to remain in RRS. Members with 15 years of service or more, for example, were receiving a 10% of their salary was being put into the 457 plan by RRS. Is it correct to understand that that's being reduced to 1% come January 1?
You said 10% into the 457 plan.
Yes, under the former RRS plan, the
DC plan, right? The defined.
yes, the DC plan with RRS, yes.
So go to page 11 on that pamphlet there. Because that'll show you the breakout. Okay, so you can see there, this is the current, sorry, for those online, page 11 of the pamphlet shows you in the bottommost chart for the DC plan, if you have 15 years, 15 plus years, the employee is currently contributing 0 and the city is contributing 10%. So you're right. Now, in 2024, 5% of that is going over to the employee. Your salary will go up by 5% plus some to accommodate that change. So you will then be contributing 5% through payroll deduction, and the city will be contributing 5 for a total of 10. So it matches that.
Will that salary adjustment count as our standard cost of living adjustment, or will we receive an additional cost of living adjustment to our salary?
So in RRS, cost of living adjustments are not automatic; they are ad hoc. There's and that's
Not in RRS. I mean, in our standard salary and our standard.
so
cost of
that
living
so salary adjustments in general are totally separate from this conversation. The reason the salary is being adjusted in this case is to cover the contribution change for retirement. And that is a one-time change.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, we'll take the online question and then one more in person.
Valerie Kirby, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
All right. Good morning, everyone. 2 questions. One, when will the recorded sessions become available for playback?
Recorded sessions become available for playback. Yes, we do have some recorded sessions on our website. We have recordings. If you have a specific recording that you're interested in, please email the VRS Transition Questions email box, and we will, make that available to you if you require it.
Well, can I make that request now? Because this was a very informative session. And
Sure.
Especially on one of the pages where you talk about these various formulas. I think it was on slide 29. A lot of information that goes into that calculation is not included. So, and there may be others on here that want their this recording or this information as well. So my request is there, and I think that'll help others as well, please. And how would we obtain it, and how soon will it be available? This recording.
Sure. If you could, because I hear your question, but I want to make sure that we don't lose track of your name. Can you just email the VRS Transition Questions email box, please, and make that request in writing? That would be immensely helpful. Thank you.
All right, will do. My second question, if you remain with RRS, what VRS benefits can you participate in other than life insurance?
None. So remember, it's an all or nothing decision. You either, remain in RRS and you continue as if nothing changed for you, or you go into VRS and you will be fully in VRS and no longer contributing to RRS.
Okay, thank you.
But you are correct with the group life insurance. I mean, that I believe will remain as is.
Okay.
So again, nothing will change despite the salary adjustment.
Okay, thank you.
And I do think that there was a comment from VRS on your first question.
Yeah, I was just going to again reiterate that there's also a lot of the information on the public website, like the handbook and the videos, the short learning channel videos, and a recorded VRS webinar too. So again, all of that information is also on the VRS site, the public website that anyone can access.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, I just got hired by the city not much more than a year ago, so I'm a little bit fuzzy on my benefits as they are now, let alone this whole thing. But my question is, if I'm not vested, if I haven't worked for the city for 5 years, what happens to my employer contributions on the RRS system if I transition?
Gotcha. So the way it will work if you're not vested, if you and I'm in the same situation, so less than 5 years with the city, and I imagine your 401a a DC plan account. So your account will stay in RRS as is. If you work up to your 5 years, then it's almost like you retroactively vest in what is there. So that will become available to you. Now, it may not be as large as someone with 10 years, right? But it would then become available to you when you retire or leave city service.
Thank you very much.
Denise Carpenter, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
I just wanted to reiterate or put my name back on the list of what Valerie asked for. I had asked for this also a couple months back, a recording of kind of any one of these sessions. This one is perfect, just so I can take it to a financial advisor as well. But this was very, very informative yeah, this is kind of the information that I've been kind of looking to get. But if I can get on that list that Valerie's on, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely, sure. We will, yeah, thank you. And glad to hear the feedback that this one was very helpful. We can make this recording available. It sounds like that would be helpful for everybody. So Denise will make sure that you get a copy as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the presentation. It was definitely very informative.
Great, good. Glad to hear it. All right, any other questions? All right, so I guess we will close out for today. Please keep in mind the form deadline of this Friday for the hybrid plan Form 5. And then last announcement is the retirement counseling beginning next week. So keeping that in mind as well. Thank you.